So today we're going to be drawing smiles, and I thought that would maybe be a little more fun and interesting than just drawing a mouth. So I've got my reference here. I'm going to stick it up at the top because I don't think it'll be in the way. I'm going to probably get rid of it a little bit later in order to doodle. But I'm going to start talking about kind of the inside of the mouth first before the outside. So I do want to, I know usually I work the other way. I usually start around the mouth and then I work inwards. But for today, I want to start with kind of the mouth opening and work outwards because the teeth and the smile aspect is kind of my focus for today. So I'm going to draw nice and big, kind of just this overall shape here, the opening. Now what I'm doing as I do this is I'm trying to kind of like picture the distance from here to here approximately. And somebody asked me, I can't remember where, and I can't remember who, I can't remember what happened, but I remember there being a question coming in somewhere asking about how I measure things, and I don't remember where it was in order to get back to it. And I do have some answers for that, how I measure things. Mostly it has to do with comparing angles and, you know, sometimes with kind of a proportional thing, like how many of this height fit into the width. Let's see here, it'd be 1, 2, 3, 4. So the height from here to here is 1/4 of the width. So those are some things that I might use to measure. But mostly I look at angles and I kind of eyeball it, especially something like this that I'm just kind of moving quickly. But let's see, I think really it should be to here. So let's use that measurement. Let's see if I'm even close. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's pretty close. And then I was gonna bring it down here, but I don't think that's totally right. So I'll ignore that for now. Okay, so now I've got an opening. So now we can start to talk about the teeth. And the key with the teeth is to keep everything simple. So if you start outlining all the teeth, that's when someone's gonna start to look like a monster and it's gonna look pretty crazy. And yes, I realize in this references that there do appear to be lines in between the teeth, but we need to try and not think of them as lines and just think of there being different planes to the teeth. Like the front part of the tooth is flat and then it kind of angles until it meets the next tooth instead of just like drawing a line around them. So the alternative here, what we're gonna do instead is kind of look at the shadow shape in here. And I'm just gonna put it in roughly. And the reason that I like using black and white charcoal is that I can just keep changing my mind a lot. So I'm gonna make this end more narrow here. And now I'm gonna look at right here. There's another tooth there, but I'm just gonna ignore it temporarily and get that little shape here. Okay, so now instead of outlining the teeth, I'm going to draw this shape. I'll outline it on the page. Okay, so I'm going to outline this shape and I'm gonna keep it pretty basic at first. Like I'll probably just draw a straight line through here and then up here before putting in these little divisions. But we wanna focus on that instead of outlining each tooth. So there's a bit of space until the lip. When I come over to this canine, there's a little space there until the lip too. And then there's kind of this area, what are those called, those second teeth? I can't remember. there's a little area where these little guys, that's what they're called, little guys. I remember now. If anybody knows the names of these teeth. I don't know if they're cuspids. But anyway, there's kind of my outline. So maybe right about in here is the division between the two front teeth. So I'm just gonna put in that little shape there. I think that shape's gonna just about take care of itself on this side. And then we need a little bit more definition here, coming up to this little guy. And this tooth is angled up a bit, so it's not flat. It's really important to look carefully at these shapes, not just generalize them. I think a lot of the time, as humans, we kind of want to generalize shapes, even them all out, make them parallel and perpendicular, but they're really not. All right, well, if nobody can tell me what this is, I'm gonna get on Wikipedia afterwards, and I'm going to report to everybody all the names of all the teeth. I need to go back to school. All right, so you know what? I think this is pretty good. I think this is detailed enough, the shape here at the bottom. And actually, now that I'm looking at this compared to this, I'm not totally happy with. So I'm gonna move that over, well, like that. And I've got an eraser somewhere. Let's see, I'll erase it a little wider too. Can always change your mind. So cuspid, bicuspid, canine, right? Maybe. Okay, there we go. So now there are some teeth on the reference photo that are visible down here, but I think for the most part, it's good to just kind of either leave them out, like either pretend that there are no teeth there at all, or if it really wouldn't make sense for there to not be any teeth, then just really don't put any details and just put a little bit of shading. So I'm just gonna go and shade this in. If I want to add more detail in there later, if I want to hint that there are some teeth there, and I guess that's what I would just leave it as. If there are teeth here to be seen, hint at it, but don't spell it out because it just becomes distracting. So I'm gonna leave my shading light enough that I can adjust that later if I want to. Now, usually this is not quite enough definition. So what we're also going to do is add in the shapes of the gums up here. So just these little triangular pieces. And then what's gonna happen is your mind is going to fill in that line in between without literally drawing it. Just by this little shape down here pointing at the shape of the gums at the top, you will automatically imagine the line in between. You don't need to literally draw it. It's really one of the nice things about art is that you can just hint at things and imply them, and it works way better than if you try and spend the time to just spell it all out. All right, how's it looking, guys? What do you think? Now, you know, there's some more shading to be done here, but I think I want to move on, just structurally speaking, a little bit more around the mouth before coming back to doing some more shading on this. So there will be a little bit more shading there on the teeth in the mouth, but let's go ahead and move on first. So thinking about the mouth, I'm just gonna sketch kind of sort of what I have, except I'm gonna draw the lines like you shouldn't. And up here, somewhere there's gonna be a top lip, and somewhere down here there will be a bottom lip, okay? So hang on to that. Teeth, and I'm not really talking about the corners of the mouth right now. Teeth, top lip up here, bottom lip down here. One of the things that we often don't think about with mouths is that they have depth to them. So if I'm looking at this from the side, someone smiling, this is where their front tooth is gonna be. The mouth sticks out like this, okay? It's gonna look like an eyeball. And the bottom lip sticks out like that, all right? So there is a depth difference between the lips and the teeth. The teeth are behind the lips have a thickness, okay? So when we're talking about that like middle part of the mouth here, it's kind of like we need to think of two rectangular prisms. I totally sound like a nerd now. It's okay, I am a nerd. Let's see if I can sketch this in perspective. So this is like the teeth, okay? Let's say the middle of the two front teeth are here, and then the cuspids, yay. Then on top of that, there's going to be a box that sticks out further, like this. Hopefully this is making sense because my doodles get a little crazy. So that center part of the top lip can't be back here because it's got to kind of be like the line, the center line goes up the teeth and then along this underneath and then up here. So the center line of the mouth and that kind of dip in the philtrum is going to be in a different place than the teeth. I hope that makes sense in some way. Let me know if it did. Let me know if it didn't. But basically what I'm trying to say is that if you have here the indentation in the gums and the division between the two front teeth, then unless you're looking perfectly straight on at somebody, you can't put the philtrum right above it. That starts to look flat. So here's what we need to do instead. Instead, we have to imagine how the lip sticks out and put that division of the philtrum there. So it can be really good to kind of follow a center line around the lip, you know, and even just to draw curved marks to imagine the thickness of that lip. So the same thing with the bottom. The bottom lip will come out like this, and then there's usually a little indentation underneath here where the skin goes back in a little bit. But try and imagine that three-dimensional aspect here with the lips coming forward. I'm gonna put this back up here, and this is a little bit blown out. So again, I'm gonna do some outlining so you can kind of see where things are. So the bottom lip here is more flat than the top lip. It's just being stretched out quite a lot. So the curve doesn't come quite as much forward. It's just a little bit forward than that line in the teeth compared to the line there at the center of the top lip. So I'm going to sketch that in first, that curve. And then put in a philtrum shape, well, the bottom of the philtrum anyway. This thing up here between the nose and that indentation in the lip is called the philtrum. So I'm going to talk about the outside corners of the mouth a little bit before getting into shading here. And you know, what's interesting to me is that here there's an opening, okay? So there's a hole in the mouth here, and then here there is some shading coming out of there. And really we see that usually more than we see actual lines on the outside for where the pigmentation of the lips end. So I'm not gonna put a clear outline out here, and the same thing for the bottom lip. I'm not going to put a clear outline there. And also just a little bit about the appearance of gender in these situations, that if you have an outline around the entire mouth, that tends to make the mouth look feminine because there's more pigmentation in women's lips usually than men's lips. And there's less pigmentation usually in men's lips. And also, contrary to what you would think, men usually have wider mouths than women. Women usually have more narrow mouths. Just FYI. So if you want to keep everything looking masculine, really only put definition on the top lip, especially if it's in shadow, and just in the center part on the bottom. And then don't put anything over here and over here. Here's the other reason for that. The other reason for that is that there is a plane change when you come up this way. There is a plane change where the skin starts to curve this direction after it leaves the lips, okay, and it goes up the philtrum. Down here on the bottom lip, the same thing. Underneath that lip, the skin starts to go in a little bit. But by the time that you get out here, the plane on the outside of the mouth is the same on the lip and on that skin above the lip in that mustache area. The same thing here. The plane stays the same. So there's a little bit of a difference in pigmentation, but not really in the direction that the skin is facing. So I'm just going to get a little bit of shading in here, and then right about here I'll start to pick up the shape of that lip again. Now on this side, because this picture is taken a little bit from the side, it's not straight on, there's a little bit of a different shape that happens there, and it doesn't come into a point. So it's something like that, and then the opening. Now this side is in shadow, so it's getting a little bit more of some shading on the bottom lip, so you can kind of see the edge, and less so on this side. So I'm just going to put a really faint outline on this side. All right. Now let's get some shadows put in. The light in this situation is coming from above. And for me, it's on the left, but Facebook is flipping everything around. So I think for you guys, it's going to be on the right. So everything on the bottom and on the opposite side of the light source is getting some shadow. So let's outline some shadows. This is a cast shadow. And here's a form shadow. The difference is that a cast shadow exists because something is blocking the light, whereas a form shadow exists because the form has turned away from the light. So this is a form shadow too. The lip has turned facing downwards. And there's a form shadow over here as well. And again, this is because the lip has turned away, because remember I said the lips turn this way and across. So this side is going backwards. A shadow edge. Now up here, there's a cast shadow from the nose. And we'll just continue the shadow a little bit down here. I'm going to put in this shadow from the cheek as well. And this shadow is a combination of a cast shadow and a form shadow. And I'll show you what I mean in just a second once I get it kind of sketched out. So in this section, the cheek is turning this way. And that's why right here, it stops facing the light. It's turned away and the light can't hit it anymore. But here on the upper lip area, it is facing the light, but the cheek is blocking it a little bit. So this bit of it is a cast shadow. Now the difference between a form shadow and a cast shadow, besides why it happens, is that cast shadows are a little darker and the edge is crisper. The edge on a form shadow is a little bit softer. So we can just keep in mind all that as we go and shade along here. So I'll get to the teeth, but for now, I'm just gonna shade along the outside. So this bit up here is a cast shadow. I'm gonna make the edge nice and sharp. Make it a little dark. And I'm not seeing any pigmentation difference over here on that top lip. So I'm just gonna let it kind of fade right now. I could always change my mind later and do something different. Maybe I will, I change my mind a lot. But for now, I'll just leave it that way. A little bit more of that upward turn here for that smile. So I'm just restating how dark this is here. All right, so now this is a cast shadow, which turns into a form shadow. So I'm gonna let that stay dark. And then this, I just want to get a softer edge on it. So I'm just going to hatch over that shadow edge a little bit. Then even though all this is lighter here, it's still in shadow. It's getting some reflected light over here and here. There's some light bouncing around from somewhere, bouncing into the shadow there. So I'm going to shade it so that it's in shadow, but just not make it too dark. So again, this is a cast shadow, so I'm making this a little darker and a little crisper. And then making a nice feathered edge on that other side. There's a little bit of that shading coming down this way too. Hey Hugo, what I'm using is General's charcoal pencils. And I have medium and white today. That's all I've got right now. But I have a caveat on that because the last box of these that I bought, the mediums seemed more like hard pencils than medium pencils. And other people on Facebook told me they have the same experience, that all of a sudden their General's charcoals are a little bit harder. So I'm not sure if that's a fluke or if they've changed their formula. So you might need to try a soft one. And I just bought a box. I'm just waiting for them to be delivered of medium and soft to make a comparison to a brand new batch and see what's going on with them. And maybe I'll write Generals as well. So that's my only caveat. I like medium, hard, and white, but I might need to switch that preference to medium, soft, and white. But I like Generals because I don't know about all brands, but some brands that I've tried of charcoal gets like sticky after you put a couple layers down, and I don't like that. So I buy these because they don't get sticky. They seem to stay more powdery. Yeah, Todd, I agree. Their quality varies. And it's a bummer because I recommend them a lot, and you know, I feel like they're the best charcoal pencils that I've used, but every now and then just a pencil has like what seems like a stone in it or something, and you know, kind of a bummer. So I'm just using this fluffy brush to get rid of the little eraser bits, but now that I'm doing it, I feel like I should just smear it all. All right, let's get back to the teeth for a second. So the teeth have shading on them, okay? Let me know what you think. I like how they look without lines in between, without those edges. I think that looks nice. So I'm not going to put any lines in between, but sometimes there's some shading that you might want to do. And definitely, even if I'm not talking about using shading to divide the teeth, we still need to set them in their location, okay? Because they're not flat. This goes away from us. It's kind of like away from us, towards us, and away from us again. Now the light's coming over here, so this is going to be the section to get the most light instead of directly in front. So this tooth will have less light than this tooth, and this one will have more than that one, for example. So I would say overall on the teeth, I've already shaded that tooth in quite a lot. I could lighten it a little bit if I wanted to, but I think it's fine without it. And I would say right about here is where the form shadow overall, like if we think of these teeth as if you had like a strip of paper that you curved, right about there is where this is all form shadow this way and this is all light. So the other thing that's happening here besides this form shadow is that the mouth is casting a shadow onto the teeth, and I feel like it's a little bit difficult to see here, but it's right about there. And I made sure when I took the photo to have a good cast shadow there on the teeth. So we need a cast shadow like that, and what that does is it also shows us the shape of the teeth. I'm shading the cast shadows on the teeth really lightly because I want them to stay separate from the shadow on the underneath plane of the lip here. And it doesn't need to be too super clear. I think sometimes we believe that we need more definition and clarity than we really do. Something like that. I'm gonna feather off the shading on this tooth a little bit, and then I'm going to put in a little bit more shading on this plane of the tooth So again, I'm shading, not outlining, but it is going to give you the impression that there's an outline around that tooth. And I'm going to do the same thing here. I want to make sure it's shading and not a line. Let's get some white charcoal in here. How about that? So I'm going to follow the planes of these teeth a little bit. I'm not sure if you guys can see the planes however you're looking at the picture, but I know that there's a side of the tooth going this way, and then there's the front plane. I definitely don't want these teeth to become too separate, so I am going to also shade directly across the teeth so that they stay a little bit unified. And I'm gonna shade a little bit up into that shadow too, just to keep it light, again, separate from the mouth. And then I'm gonna do a little bit with the planes on this tooth also. So if I were to shade in white but keep them separated, again, I'm gonna have a lot of the same problem as if I were to be drawing lines in between them. So number one is you want these to be a unified group of teeth, and then you can put in some of their own planes and definitions. You go definitely less is more sometimes, that's for sure. Now probably there would be some reasons to shade in up and down marks too, but it's not something I want to do quite this early on. And I'm just really gently going over these teeth as well with a little teeny tiny bit of white. And now I'm going to move on to the lips. I'm actually going to start around the lips. So there is quite a lot of light in this section because I had a little doodle up here, didn't I? Yep. Because this top part of the lip, kind of the mustache area, faces upwards. And anything facing upwards here, since our light is coming from above, anything facing upwards is getting light. So that includes that mustache area, and that includes the bottom lip, which is facing up. Before I get to this upper lip, I'm going to work, I guess, kind of between the lower lip, the skin around the lower lip, and the skin that comes around here. Of the surface of the mouth. And then I'm going to do a little bit of the same thing here at the outside. Color, you know, because I want it to be stuff that everybody has at home or that people are likely to have at home. So let me know, do you have ideas? What do you want to draw? What do you want to do? I think drawing is nice because it's accessible, you know. I'm using this gray paper and the black and white charcoal, but you can do it with colored pencils. You can do it with white paper and just pencil if that's all you have, but for the most part, people probably have whatever they need to follow along. All right, guys, so I think that's about it. I just want to thank you for drawing along with me and for dealing with the technology issue, which happened last time also. So hopefully I can figure out if that's a problem on my end, or maybe it's just like, you know, technology. I don't know. So anyway, if you did a drawing, or if you do a drawing, it doesn't necessarily even have to be based off this photo reference, but if you do something based on what I taught you, please share that with me. I love seeing it. I miss teaching and having my students in my classroom. So it really means a lot to me that you guys are here with me and we're having some community together and we're drawing together. I love seeing what you do. And next week, let's draw a dog. So I'm gonna have my dog, and if you wanna draw your dog, you can draw your dog or your friend's dog or your mom's dog or your neighbor's dog or just some dog off the internet that you liked. But you can just draw along and just use the same technique. And yeah, any questions, let me know. And I hope you're all healthy and safe and doing well and staying home. See you guys later. Thank you.